Renee is a young girl who loses her parents in a tragedy, with a strange old lady attending their funeral and claiming that she is her grandmother, taking her to her house and taking responsibility for her guardianship. Unsure to what's happening, not recognizing this old lady, Renee comes across horrifying events in the house, with the old lady locking her in a room each night before 7 p.m. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator, and welcome to this dark story which makes you question if the closest people to a girl, her family, are whether to be trusted or not. This video will have spoilers as always, and with that said, let's begin. Renee, a young girl, explains on what a wonderful life she has with her loving parents who cherish her presence every single day. As Renee loves dolls so much, her mother makes a beautiful one with wings for her on her birthday, which quickly becomes her favorite doll, hugging it every night going to sleep. Every happy beginning in horrors, however, is followed by a tragedy right after, and this is no exception in the story of little Renee. A funeral takes place the very next day, with Renee's perspective showing how difficult a concept it is to understand for a child her age, with the screen only going to black and not showing what goes on in her mind. At the funeral, only an old, unfamiliar lady was present, who informed Renee that her parents had passed away, who insists that she is Renee's grandmother. She takes Renee to her house, with Renee being a child believing she is her grandmother even though never having had seen her before, taking the only thing she has left in the world, the doll that was made for her birthday. 6 months pass since the tragedy, with Renee having a room of her own and lots of toys, with the seeming grandmother treating her very nicely, or at least for what Renee believes. The grandmother makes Renee go to bed at 7 p.m. every night and locks the door on her, something Renee doesn't fully understand. One night, being unable to keep sleep due to a recurring dream seeing her deceased parents, Renee realizes that grandmother forgot to lock her bedroom door, noticing that she has been coughing a lot recently, being kept in the dark of what really is happening. Renee's room seems normal and not like a cell where she would be imprisoned in, with the grandmother seemingly really taking care of her. Everything seems normal in her room apart from the mirror, with a large crack splitting it in half and a loud ticking sound on the clock. Managing to leave her room, exploring the enormous but unusually empty house with many rooms, with the grandmother sleeping in the attic, she gives in to her curiosity and starts investigating. She soon comes across a ritualistic piece of paper, seemingly being an ingredient list for some sort of ambiguous offering. The list only mentions an offering for 3 dolls, with 4 bottles colored blue, green, purple, and yellow being used, and a final knock on the big shelf in the living room being required. Dismissing this strange note, she goes to her doll room, where in horror she witnesses her human-sized doll called Becky having come to life, being very hostile and chasing after her. Her appearance of having a broken neck doesn't also help from the fact of being a creepy live doll who belongs nowhere better than in worst kind of nightmares. Avoiding Becky, Renee comes across 2 books her mother used to read her every night: the Book of Colored Spirits and the Book of the Three. The Book of Colored Spirits entails the story of a sad and lonely sorcerer who used his powers to create 5 colored spirits: red, green, purple, yellow, and blue, in order to keep himself some company. The royalty, in fear of losing their position, ordered the prosecution of anyone in possession of dark magic. In fear, the sorcerer places these spirits in different colored bottles and disguises himself as a wine merchant in order to stay safe from the wrath of the royalty. Subsequently, reading the Book of the Three, it entails the unsettling story of 3 girls called Lala, Lulu, and Lily, who decide to leave home and explore a pink mountain. After some time, just before sunset, a thick mist forms, limiting the girls' line of sight. Lulu, being in the middle, manages to hold on to Lily, but as tries to reach for Lala, she sees a pale woman with long hair and black eyes staring at her, with Lala seen in the distance with many other hung on trees in a harrowing sight. The other 2 girls suffer the same ill fate, for they were classified as bad girls for leaving home. The books clearly not being intended for children, with the mother being a little of a psycho reading these books to Renee. Renee lets out a sigh, remembering those good old days when her mother read these books to her, and then continues doing what she's not supposed to if she ever got a message from the book, exploring places she's not supposed to. Exploring her doll room, Renee analyzes her creepy dolls, with one being custom made for her, shaped as herself. Performing the ritual Renee found earlier and mimicking the directions Lala, Lulu, and Lily from the book we're looking at, a secret passage opens behind the big shelf, which severely confuses Renee. In this newly discovered place, Renee finds a hand mirror, which similarly to her bedroom mirror has a crack splitting the mirror in half, which she remembers that was broken by her, which could also mean her room mirror was broken by her, explaining that she doesn't like mirrors. Traversing through this place, she comes across surreal passageways and items, opening a locked box which has a book called The Book of the Awakening. The book goes on to explain that possessed items owned by one's family are cursed to roam the house at night, guarding the residents of the family, which are known as Noctambulant spirits. The spirit will do whatever necessary to remove the house intruders it doesn't recognize with any means necessary. This of course refers to Becky, who comes to life at night while being a harmless doll in daytime, who doesn't seem to recognize Renee and wants to remove her from the old lady's premises, who introduced herself as Renee's grandmother. This would make sense as Renee doesn't belong in this house. Renee also finds a diamond-shaped charm, which she remembers also finding in her mother's study when she was alive. This confuses Renee to why her mother would also have the same book and charm, and why would this old lady cast a spell on a doll to guard her house? Intending to go to her room in the attic in order to uncover the sinister mysteries, she finds the first chapter of the Book of the Awakeness on her way, which entails information about a sacrilege dark magic practice known as Voodoo, the practice of bringing one's soul from the afterlife to the human world, using an item in this practice which belongs to them as a totem to redirect their memories. But despite all this, the brought back soul into a new body would never be the same. In order for the ritual to be successful, a human needs to act as a medium, giving up their rite of passage into the afterlife after they die, being forever trapped in a worldly item, cursed to serve the family they belong to. Going up to the attic, Renee finds the old lady's diary with the first entry written on 4th of February 2004. The entry is very bizarre as it mentions a couple named Carrie and Nedrick being distraught from the loss of their daughter 1 year ago, with this old lady also saying she's distraught from losing her granddaughter. The old lady, unable to get in touch with her daughter Carrie and her son-in-law Nedrick, receives a letter from them after several months, displaying that they're being strangely hopeful and happy. This doesn't last long, however, as the old lady doesn't get any response from them, with the news coming to her on April of 2005 that both her daughter and son-in-law passed away. This becomes even stranger when the people who passed the news to her inform the old lady that Nedrick's and Carrie's daughter needs a guardian and a place to be in, with her grandmother being her next of kin. The old lady, confused to how this could be, with their daughter being long dead, attends the funeral and surprisingly witnesses in shock that her granddaughter Renee is in fact well and alive, who despite looking and acting the same, being seemingly a different person, not remembering her own grandmother. The grandma also notices one of the bigger dolls, Becky, walks around at night but doesn't seem to want to harm her, hence why she keeps Renee in her room at night until she figures out what's happening. Several days later, the police visit the grandma's house, providing her with the belongings of her daughter and Nedrick. That's how the grandmother was in the possession of the Book of the Awakeness and the other two grim books. That's when the grandma comes to the harrowing realization that Carrie used herself as a medium, bringing the soul of Renee back to life, hence being trapped in the doll's body, cursed to protect the household's residents for eternity, unable to pass to the afterlife. That is why the grandma kept Becky around, as she didn't want to lose her daughter, despite the unorthodox nature of her being around. This explains why Becky, or the embodiment of Carrie, Renee's mother, doesn't recognize her and treats her as an outsider, as in reality, she is a different person despite having her soul brought back to life. As Renee hears her grandmother's coughs persisting, she goes back to her own bedroom, hiding under her bed. That's when the grandmother appears and asks if she left the room, to which Renee denies. Grandma confirms that she's feeling much worse than usual and tells Renee how loved she truly is, and she should never doubt that. But Renee, being concerned that she is an outsider and that's why Becky doll or her mother chased after her, while leaving the grandma alone as they are family, becomes insecure and contemplates on what to do. As she is troubled with the negative thoughts, Renee dismisses her concerns and realizes how much her grandma truly loves her, who has been trying to protect her by locking her in a room. Renee then decides to pick up the torn papers from the book, chapter 3 of the Book of the Awareness, to release the spirit of her mother, the Noctambulant spirit. The chapter includes a ritual on how to release the trapped souls conveniently, requiring one to submerge the charm paper in unclean water and dispose of the water carefully. Renee proceeds to perform the ritual and free the trapped soul of her mother, being a Noctambulant spirit. In return, Renee reassures herself that she was truly loved, as her mother spent countless days researching on how to bring her daughter back to life to the point of sacrificing herself. The grandma also loved Renee, referring to her house as their home. This convinces Renee to carry on, not only for herself, but for the ones who loved her and still do, accepting her life as a new person returned from afterlife, explaining how she hated mirrors as she was reminded of who she is, but now fully accepting herself and protecting her totem doll, the one that her mother gave to her on her birthday, in order to protect the spell and herself from going back to afterlife. In this ending, Renee, being overwhelmed by negative thoughts, starts to believe it would be better for everything if she wasn't around, as why would her mother see her as an outsider and chase after her? Therefore, she decides to break the voodoo spell and go to afterlife. This time, she puts the charm on herself and remembers the piercing words of Ned Drake when he was alive. He told her that she is not his daughter, that the reincarnated Renee is not really her. Renee begins to feel guilty and believe none of this was meant for her, but they were meant for the original Renee, the one who died many months before. The reincarnated Renee, or the soul that took her place, believes she doesn't deserve anything in this world, and in a sad and lonely manner, bids this world goodbye and travels to the afterlife. In this ending, thinking about how Grandma was hiding the secrets of who Renee is and how Becky is possessed by Carrie's soul, she becomes concerned that Grandma might be plotting something against her. This causes Renee to become really paranoid, making her to do something horrible, poisoning her grandmother and killing her while she's asleep. Renee remembers the past, how Nedrick and Carrie were constantly fighting, seemingly Nedrick not happy with what Carrie had done, bringing a soul to their daughter's body. Renee proceeds to tear the last pages of the Book of the Awareness, preventing anyone from knowing how to break the spell, hiding them inside her doll. As her parents' argument comes to an abrupt end, Renee peeks through her door and witnesses in shock her mother's neck snapped all the way back like the Becky doll, and her father being dead as well, which means that the father killed his wife and eventually took his own life, unable to live with himself, not accepting a daughter that was brought back to life through use of voodoo and dark magic. Their souls, however, become Noctambulant spirits, trapped in dolls so that they can forever be with Renee, providing her with a fabricated and shallow meaning of a loving family. Renee, with her little fragile mind snapping, starts telling herself that she deserves to be in a loving family, with a paranoia and feeling of being unwanted, causing her to live with the trapped souls of her parents. That's it for this video, folks. If you enjoyed it, you can stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Zar, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.